All right, welcome back to the Homestand Show. We have a very, very special guest joining us. Last November, he set out on a mission to play 20 games of pickup basketball in 20 different countries. And so far, he's almost halfway there at 9. Joining us now is Leigh Ellis from Atlanta. Where's the next stop for you after this?
Well, to be determined. I've got a couple of things on the horizon here. I'm hoping to be in Lithuania for the EuroLeague Final Four. I haven't heard for sure if that's going to happen, but if that does go ahead, I'll be playing the next game in Kaunas, which very, very excited about. If not, then I've got a bit of a summer vacation with the family coming up. We're going to be in Europe, and they don't know it yet, but I'm going to try to sneak in a few games while I'm there, maybe in Spain or Portugal, somewhere like that. But I've got to be a little bit discreet with how I go about planning that, because obviously if I'm going away with the family, I don't want to say to the wife, just going to slip out and play some basketball here. But
she knows you too well, Leigh. Come on.
Yeah, she does. She does. Look, to be honest, James, I think the first time I spoke to you about it, I was telling you, she's helping me pack to get me out of the house. So the more time I spend away from her, I think she's saying she's encouraging and supporting me for my project. But I think it's after 15 years of marriage as well, she's like, yeah, you can spend more time away. It's fine.
Get out.
So Leigh, what was the reason behind you pursuing this project?
Well, look, I love basketball and I love traveling, and they've been my two passions in my life. And when I do travel, I with my wife and our two boys, traveling is a big part of what we do. And so every time I did travel, if I found a court outside, I would just go and try to play and put those clips up on Instagram and YouTube and things like that. Now, the clips themselves aren't exactly me going out there lighting up guys. It's not like I'm a former street ball player or anything like that. It's just I love playing and I love meeting local people and having fun. But I got a really, really good response from my audience on Instagram, and people said, "Hey, man, if you're ever in my city, if you're ever in Portugal, or if you're ever in China, if you're ever in Japan, South America, anywhere like that." People said, come out and we'll organize a game. And the more and more responses I got to that, it just sort of gave me this idea that I did say to my wife. I said, I wonder if I could turn this into something, and make it into like a series and try to get it, on Netflix or Amazon Prime or somewhere like that. And she was honestly, all jokes aside, she was like, listen, you got to go for it. If you want to try this, then do it. And so I left the No Dunks podcast last year at the end of the season and decided to jump right into it. And 6 months later, I've been to 9 different cities and countries, and I'm feeling okay about where I am right now. The hardest part for me is compiling all the content and trying to put it all together into a feature that's engaging and enthralling and that someone might want to watch. But it's been a really, really fun process and a really absorbing challenge of trying to take on an idea like this and turn it into something.
Yeah, it's fantastic. So I implore you all to definitely follow Leigh on Instagram. All right, Leigh, you obviously spent many years in Toronto. You know the Raps really well in the play, of course, against Chicago. I know it's taking you back a little bit to your previous vocation, shall we speak, but you follow this closely. Number one, do you still regard the Raptors as your team, or have you moved on from them?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, because that's where I did spend 9 years of my life. I've been in Atlanta nearly 10, so I've got certainly a bit of an affection towards the Hawks as well. But I think the Raptors, being the lone Canadian team, being the non-United States team, that's kind of me. I'm a non-United States person living in America, and the same when I was living in Canada. So, excuse me. You have a little bit of I think a connection to that sort of being a bit of an outsider there. And I think, look, the thing is with the Raptors for me, those 9 years that I lived there, I always thought they were going to blow it or just, somehow get things wrong when it came down to the playoffs. I was completely shocked that they managed to win the championship in 2019. Because if you remember, they lost the first game against Orlando in that first round. They were down 2-1 against the Sixers, should have been down 3-1. They came back. Of course, the Kawhi Leonard crazy shot there. And then against the Bucks, they looked like they were dead in the water as well when they were down 2-0 in that series. And so they sort of overcame every challenge. And then they had to beat the two-time champs, the Warriors, in the finals, and they did that as well. So it was one of those things I just never thought would happen. I would have thought the Raptors would have gone more like the Grizzlies and actually folded at some point rather than go on to win the championship, but they did that. And it was just great for the city. It was great for basketball and great for the NBA. So I think I will say that the Raptors probably are still, one of the teams I have the most affection for.
As a Vancouver guy, hearing that Grizzlies shot there definitely did hurt a little bit. But Leigh, DeMar DeRozan, we're talking about the Raptors history. One of the integral parts of the Raptors franchise. He comes back to Toronto tomorrow night to try to eliminate his former team. What are your thoughts on that storyline? Isn't it being overblown? Because I think that's the only storyline on this game, because both teams have fallen way short of expectations this season.
Well, you're right. I don't think there's a whole lot to separate these teams at all. I mean, the Raptors won both games in Toronto, the Bulls won in Chicago, and then the wins, I think they were separated by one win over the course of the season. So there really isn't a lot. And then it just comes down to which of the two teams, if the game is close, who do you think would have the ball in their hands? And I think that is DeRozan's probably the one who gives both teams the most confidence. That, like, we've seen it ever since he's been in Chicago in the fourth quarter, late in the game. He just knows how to get to his spot. He knows how to make those clutch shots. And so if you're the Bulls, you probably go in with the confidence of going, we've probably got the best closer out of the two teams, but the Raptors have home court advantage, and that's where they've been good this season. So I think the line is about 5 points in favor of Toronto, which is about a fair spread. So I think going into this game, the Raptors probably win, but the Bulls probably cover if you're a betting person as well. Because I don't think it's going to be a blowout. I think these games, as we've seen from playing games in the past, for the most part, since the NBA adopted this new strategy, it's been working. You've had some good competitive games, and they're going to be close. And look, I mean, going back to what we were saying before, the Raptors tend to lose first game of the playoffs at home. This is only one game, so they can't afford to lose this one. Of course, even if they do win, they have to play another one to get into the the playoffs for real. So it's going to be tight. But I think DeRozan, especially knowing that he fell out with Masai Ujiri after he got traded. He didn't want to be traded to San Antonio. It turned out to be the right move by Masai and the Raptors. But I think there's still some bitterness there, and I think DeMar would love to have that last sort of, okay, I get to knock you guys out of the playoffs, and to do it in Scotiabank Arena, I think would be nice for DeMar.
We're speaking with Leigh Ellis. Yeah, the Raptors at home, 27-14, and then 19, by the way, in the play-in is 4-0. So bodes well for the Toronto Raptors. Leigh, what did you make of Masai's decision at the deadline to buy instead of sell?
Well, look, I think Masai Ujiri has shown throughout his entire time in Toronto that he goes by what he believes is the right thing to do. And that means if there's a move to be made, he'll make it. If not, he's not just going to make a move for the sake of making a move. I think every GM around that spot where the Raptors were underperforming, as you guys mentioned a little bit, there's the temptation to just make some move, make some little, deal here or there. But ultimately, if it doesn't definitely improve the team, then there's no point in doing that. One thing I really like about the Raptors, and this is something that not a lot of teams have these days in the NBA, and probably across most professional sports as well, is that continuity. And so Nick Nurse has been there for quite a while. Siakam has been there now for a while. Van Vliet, OG, Scotty Barnes only in his second season. But there's that, those guys are familiar with each other. And I think having won a championship with a lot of those guys, it gives you some confidence that, like, these guys will know how to get it together at the right time. And that to me is really, really important. And Masai Ujiri, again, when you go back to that trade for Kawhi Leonard, he gave up a fan favorite in DeMar DeRozan. He gave up Pirtle and a first-round pick. It was a gamble knowing that Kawhi could have only stayed, and he ended up only staying for that one season. But ultimately, it did pay off. They won the championship. So I think he has shown that he is not just the sort of guy. I think Brian Colangelo, the former Raptors GM, was a bit more like, just make a deal for the sake of making a deal, just to be involved. Whereas Masai is more like, I'm not sure that there's a deal out there that's definitely going to make us better. So in that case, I'm not just going to give in to the impulse of, like, make a trade for the sake of making one. And I think ultimately, look, Pirtle being back on the Raptors is a very, very good addition. But there wasn't that huge sort of, I know there was talk about, some of the other guys potentially being dealt there. Fred Van Vliet's future seems to be up in the air a little bit here. But ultimately, I think that the Raptors are in a better position they are in now because of the move of Pirtle and not really blowing up the roster.
Speaking of Fred VanVleet's future, also Nick Nurse's future has been brought into question with the Toronto Raptors. Do you see him sticking around after this season, or is it more likely that he moves on elsewhere and the Raptors and Nick Nurse kind of go through a divorce.
Yeah, well, I mean, the words that Nurse used, when was it, a week or so ago, saying, I'll take some time and I'll think about things. That to me sounds like this is his swan song, unless the Raptors were to somehow miraculously win the championship, which I don't think they're going to do this season. But look, I think what he said as well is right. He's been there as the head coach for 5 seasons, but he's been there in total for 10. And I think, he's also been coaching Team Canada as well. He probably just wants a bit of a change of environment. He's the sort of guy who's actually coached a lot around the world as well. So maybe he's a bit like an Australian backpacker. And he's like, you know what, after a while, I just got to get out and go and coach somewhere else. And so we might see him, in Europe or in a different league. I know there's sort of already rumors and links about going to the Houston Rockets there. But I mean, it's very rare that you hear someone say that they're thinking about things and they're going to take some time if they're going to come back. Usually they would say, no, listen, I'm here for the long haul. I want to be a part of this. But I wouldn't be surprised. And I think it's very, very likely that this, however long the Raptors season continues here, it's going to be the end of Nick Nurse after that. But he's done a fantastic job. I think he really has done a great job. And, he's won a championship. He'll be in demand. He'll definitely get some interest from NBA teams if he chooses to stay in the NBA. But he may also sort of take the Quinn Snyder route of last season where he says, I'll take some time off, wait for the season to get started, and then potentially field offers once a few openings happen.
Yeah, it seems like his decision is already made. And once he does decide if he does leave the Raptors, there'd be tons of teams who want him. Leigh Ellis, thank you so much for doing this, and safe travels to your next destination.
Thanks very much for having me, guys.
Okay, take care. That's Leigh Ellis. Yeah, Raptors, a big game coming up against the Bulls. More than just a win, I think, on the line for the Toronto Raptors, as Leigh just alluded to. Okay, coming up after the break, the one and the only joins us, Bobby Conway of Bet99. We're going to tee up the Jays against the Tigers in the home opener in Toronto. Stay tuned for that.